So I think you guys haven't worked out yet. Uh, and take this argument in hypothetical and go where, well, it's a question of independence and self-responsibility, and plant life would be better than human life. And this is part of why I'm inspired to be inclined to argue that it's unfair to say things like a bisexual is undecided as to whether they're gay. Because, for instance, that falls back onto something like a marriage, which is a religiously devised ritual, which, as I've already proven, derives from inbreeding in kingdoms. Now, plant life don't operate this way. Plant life just drops seeds and reproduce. Uh, I found thinking about that with weed to be calming, and then to learn that that was also true of the epinephrine plant and cocaine and the opium poppy plant and all these substances. I mean, when did they get called drugs? What I'm trying to say is, like, if we had a particular political system, it could be shuffled in such a way, the cards could be stacked in such a way that salt would be permissible for your dinner, but pepper would be um, an intoxicant. And if you were to be found under breathalyzer or blood sample extractions, you have had to have pepper in your system when driving a car. But then what? Then it's not your fault you had the motor vehicle accident. It's the pepper's fault. So ban pepper. But it's not that trivial when it comes to substances, because there's so much money to be made in going, well, let's take, like, when now we're at about a 2 millennium tail end of thousands and thousands of years of coevolution with these plants. There's no other way to explain why you even have, like, they wouldn't do anything. Heroin would not do anything to your body. Taking direct opium poppy plant into your body would do nothing if there weren't already receptors in your head for it. And how did those receptors form in evolutionary terms? Well, obviously they fucking form because our usage of them preceded Kim Jong-il, John Howard, President Bush, and fucking Donald Trump, and everyone else. To the tail end of, and now we're at the 2 millennia at most. And there's now a start of talk of, and it's, you have to understand, in the history of our evolution, it's tremendously recent. It's so respective to our evolutionary development. It's so fucking recent that all these substances are prohibited and said to be dangerous. And the placebo effect, maybe it's proportional to how much you trust the state to tell you about your own body. Like, do you want the state to communally jerk you off at the same time? Every time you masturbate, do you feel the state guiding your hand? Um, I don't. And what's going on in Big Pharma is that they've worked out, well, we can create all these new illnesses by going, okay, cocaine's making. You have to remember that it's all relative. If they say cocaine is making too many people too high and too happy, so now we have to make xylocaine, benzocaine, lidocaine. That's relative to what? The boring daily life of a person working in a chemist, who is pretty much fucking boring anyway. They're boring to fuck. They're boring to work for. They're boring on every front. And I have charted every front. They're fucking boring. These are fucking boring people. How dare you have or want to stand for fucking boring people having the audacity to tell you what it constitutes to be too happy in life. So much so that it now becomes a necessary precaution. They split and divide cocaine into benzocaine, lignocaine, and xylocaine so that you can be numbed but not euphoric. What does euphoric mean? Does it mean you want to fuck? Does it mean that either the pharmacist is saying you seem euphoric, wants to fuck you, or that you want to fuck the pharmacist that thinks you're euphoric? What does it fucking even boil down to? For fuck's sake. And go read about it. Like, study, study Dawkins. Study great Professor Dawkins. Study Dawkins. Dawkins building on Darwin. And he worked out we actually we grew in and lived in cultures for fucking thousands of fucking years where it was just as common to have opium in your backyard as it was to have a tomato patch in your backyard. It was just as fucking common. Or epinephrine. Suppose you were to think as a family, well, we have to take a long journey. Tonight we will dine from the plant called, and they would call it the blah 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 whatever plant, not epinephrine or whatever fucking big pharma wanted to call it. They would have called it something else. But they would have known that its sap helped you walk long distances for great amounts of time and gave you a lot of energy. So they knew stuff like that. This sort of stuff had to have been known, had to have been experienced, and had to have been practiced. Or else we would not have the chemical ability to respond to the substances that we do have. So therefore, in prohibiting them, what goes on now is that, like, well, I mean, how fucking stupid is this discussion? Okay, let's play Guess Who can describe and help define a new illness. We can do one now. We can do, you're playing back a video recording, so you have videoxymatosis, cameltosis, and vaginosis. And it doesn't necessarily mean you have bad feminine odor. If you're my attorney, Alice Zhang, it just means that maybe you smell a little bit, as far as I can. Yeah, no, you don't smell good. I'm trying to be real here. No. But seriously, if the prohibition of access to substances that our whole species co-evolved with is something that that society and the political system is supposed to think is, a necessary, and yet eating the body of Jesus, a murdered man who, from the earliest manuscripts, didn't even confess and did not receive legitimate charge, but you're to eat his body and drink his blood, that's perfectly acceptable. But having opium, having cocaine, having epinephrine, none of that's acceptable. And that's the society we live in. And that's why I don't work in pharmacy anymore. It's not from getting. I mean, I was fucking my own boss, and she was talking about, if you started a pharmacy one day, would you be? And I was like, because and this is because I was trying to find ways to intertwine what pharmacy does with the Hippocratic Oath, and it comes to a hint. There's a hinge on do no harm that then converges on, well, let's go about a person's idea of harm. If and then in doing so, if they invade their privacy, if they think scorching a cigarette on their arm isn't harm, then don't give them appropriate medicine. Because do no harm is not an objective it's not. There's no objectivity to it. It's how do you put it? It's the wrong approach to saying that it's all relative because it's the extortion of the idea that it's all relative. That a person who would think do no harm, like it's equivalent to going to a friend who has as equal knowledge of you about anything and saying, "Will you be my medical doctor?" Unless you're open to your medical doctor informing you about what options you have that can help you um, to experience the relief from harm. Otherwise, you might as well go back to your kindergarten teacher and say, well, okay, find one of my kindergarten friends and have him or her tell me what's the best way to avoid harm. Or else I've got to educate you to some extent. But to what extent? And that's what I think this policy shit will all be about. Like, I guarantee you, unless something changes, within 100 years from now, there's going to be books filled with fucking thousands of new kinds of illnesses, and at the same time, there'll be prohibition sustained all throughout. Prohibition of the same drug that our race co-evolved with. That there was no debate for fucking hundreds upon hundreds of fucking years as to whether it was inappropriate to use this plant or that plant, and there was no debate. You could just have it. It was there. It was there for you. It's the one thing from the Bronze Age that I think is worth readdressing more than whether the loincloth should confuse police as to whether they should frisk your ball sack when you're wearing pocketless satin black boxer shorts because they say they're the Christian Australian Federal Police Department. They're the Australian Freemason Poof Patrol, and that's why they like to fond balls. But as for this prohibition business, this whole country is not founded on celebrate our proud Australian heritage. It's founded on piracy. It's founded on the robbing of Aborigines. And now it's supposed to be paradoxically founded on robbing Aborigines while acknowledging Aborigines to be the original owners of the land. And I think that paradox needs to bear out in reconciliation in terms in extension of medicine. So I'm not a fan of prohibition, but then that means I don't think you should be able to get high on cocaine, drive a car, crash it, and then say that God or Jesus misled you with the wheel because your church taught you to sing Jesus take the wheel while you were driving. I don't drive, but if I did, I would not be spouting such bullshit. But then I fall back and recourse to my initial argument, which is that if the government if Scott Morrison were to say, fuck, I feel Australia's burning, we should ban pepper. Pepper's so bad, you can keep salt, but just get rid of pepper. Don't decorate your pizzas with pepper. Don't put pepper on your pasta. Pepper's going to make you have car crashes. More than half of you cunts would believe it. Sadly. I mean, this is stolen land. You all have rights not to vote. The way I see it, I don't vote and I haven't been fined for it. But to tell you that what your biology is made out of includes a whole bunch of range of substances, and now those substances are prohibited. Meanwhile, watch as Big Pharma discovers 20 new illnesses in the next 5 years. Serious illnesses, life-threatening illnesses. Well, get fucked. They wouldn't be life-threatening if you hadn't banned these fucking substances in the first place. And that's what Big Pharma tells staff once they're on the in crowd. And that's why Big Pharma are not Hippocratic. That is to say, they know of ways to do no harm, but choose to do harm. and they're supposed to be subordinate to doctors who take oaths, the Hippocratic Oath, do no harm, and that will go no, do harm, because like supplying guns to both sides of the Vietnam War and uh, drafting out rules like you can't pursue an enemy beyond the 60 sign, whatever. Uh, while you sell guns to both sides means that the gun sellers profit off the Vietnam War no matter who wins. And the longer that the war is sustained, the more money is being made. And Big Pharma works in exactly the same way. And that's why I don't believe in Big Pharma. And Capital Chemist, as they're named after capital, as capitalism, and capital is in the Australian Capital Territory. On both those fronts, I do tell you that both of its co-founders are COVID fucking co-cunts, cunt rag, fucking cunts, cans and tall, face me. Even in physically disabling pain, I'll smash your skulls in, I'll rip your eyeballs out, go home, fuck your wives. After testing them, because I'm sure you've left them dry. No, I won't need to test them. You'd have left them too dry. Too dry. Too dry.